What is up, DTube, Steam blockchain? So today I want to talk a little bit quick about something, my experience of using an outdated device, an outdated smartphone for around 9 months. And this might sound like a joke for most people because I'm talking about the Galaxy S8, but for a power user, using a phone around 2 years after it's out, and if you're using a phone like me 24 hours a day, then you're using a lot of apps, you're doing a lot of experimentation, you're using blockchain apps, you are always updating stuff, you're updating the software, you're using the camera all the time, you're using the internal storage all the time, you're trying different games. If you're using the device like this, then it's going to drain out way faster than for the average user that probably just uses the Facebook app and just takes a few photos. So my experience is that the way you start to look at the phone, especially when you have the experience of a phone that sort of starts to become outdated quite fast. So what happened with my phone was the battery became bad super fast. Last only 2 hours a day, and have to use like 2 phones, and even chargers that are starting to get bad. Even charging it, sometimes it doesn't want to charge, and you start to you start to realize the way you look at devices, especially when you become aware of how quick they can get old. You start to realize, especially how important a smartphone is right now, especially in the digital age, especially because smartphones now, the way I look at it, it's mainly speech, right? It's communication with other humans. That's like the main value. And especially when you see a smartphone can do way more stuff than in the past. In the past, maybe I looked at what kind of cool new software update was available, or what kind of new hardware thing that they had included. But now it's just, phones are so good, so you sort of get the same experience with all, and people can sort of shift then to what is really important, which is be able to use the device now to basically create content and content as photos, videos, or text, and having a device that can do all those things on the device, so you don't have to use other gadgets. So for example, I need many times to use my MacBook Pro or a separate mic because maybe the microphone is not that good in a smartphone. So you realize eventually how you need sort of the phone more and more, and it's becoming more of a speech tool than a gadget. It becomes almost, as for many people, the phone becomes quite important, and especially now when speech is becoming more nuanced in some ways, where people are using GIFs, people are using photos and videos way more. They are switching between a lot of apps. They have apps that are updating, big updates, 50 megabyte updates constantly. You have hardware upgrades in the background. There's just a lot of software upgrades that is going on, that if you really are up to date to a lot of updates, and you want to be exploring also with the blockchain stuff, something that the phones is not really ready for, then phones are sort of shocked, like, why you want to pack all of these heavy apps on this device? It's not going to be like the average normie user. You realize how grateful you become about just having a new phone. I bought a new phone that comes soon. You realize how grateful you become over the speech ability, the communication ability, while in the past it was just about how good the camera was, or how good the software was, or something silly. But now we know, we already have access to that. Now it's really all about just the infrastructure with like trying to make some kind of decentralized infrastructure where you have all these new things that sort of pops into your awareness. For example, why can't apps communicate with each other in more efficient ways? For example, a lot of apps working as silos, that a lot of them do not communicate with each other. And for example, in software, why can't you remove certain apps? Why are there so much gimmick stuff inside? Why do you have, and this is also a big problem when your phone is getting quite outdated quite fast. A lot of it is because advertising inside of a lot of social media apps, they are really draining the phone quick. For example, in the Instagram or in Facebook, you start to consider more, especially in an outdated phone, the user experience and how harder it becomes to communicate when you sort of feel that your phone is becoming older, more outdated, and has less of battery life, and you sort of start to value a lot, in many ways, a high-end phone with a good CPU, even if it costs a little bit more, because you start to see like, okay, so if I buy this phone, we're starting to look at, I think you must starting to look at it more how they can get more juice out of a device. So now when they buy a high-end phone, they really try to look at it, okay, I can use this one to create a lot of value with it. Something that, yeah, people created a little bit of value with smartphones, Galaxy S2, Galaxy S3 and stuff like that on Instagram 2012, 2013, but it was harder to monetize it. It was way harder to monetize it. Now it's becoming more and more easier to monetize it because you can create your own sort of data and mine data. It's becoming cheaper, and with the tokenized based systems, you can your device can easily mine value, and then you can buy even better phones, better devices, better gadgets, and you can basically make this whole process much quicker. Of you can do something on your device, do some data mining, and you can quickly get the value and flip it around 10 times or maybe even 30 times faster than in the slower systems, which is kind of cool. So you sort of start to look at it more from a use perspective of, okay, so there's a lot of gimmick stuff that maybe not be so important. For example, wireless charging, some Gorilla Glass. Yeah, there is a lot of gimmick features. You sort of more look at it from a real usability standpoint of, yeah, if I'm a content creator, maybe I value the camera a lot, and not so much a lot of gimmick stuff. And yeah, it's quite interesting how back in the days, maybe you looked at the phone as more of a gadget for entertainment or something like that, but now it's like a gadget that you need to do a lot of things, and you start to see how everything is becoming more inclusive in many ways. And then you sort of start to look at it, well, the phone needs to be inclusive with the apps, the users, the creators. Everything needs to sort of blend in together, and everything needs to become more resource efficient. Like, do in a new smartphone, do I really need a GPU that is like super powerful, or do I really need a speaker that I'm never gonna use, like stereo speaker like the HTC One had, or do I really need like 4K video function, or is just 720p fine? It's interesting how your perspective and views on the device is really becoming more into an energy device, more dematerialized. You start to see how you can get more value out of the device, because these 10, 15 years smartphones has existed. They in the early days, it didn't really earn you any value. You had to have a regular job, right? But now, because it's all becoming information technology, eventually now, 10, 15 years later, finally we have covered the fixed costs, and we can start to pull in some ROI, some real return on investment. And this is something that usually happens after 10, 15 years. And that's kind of cool that finally smartphones and these gadgets are really going to start to bring in the profit, and mainly because they can scale. Like the technology in many ways becomes cheaper. A lot of gimmick stuff happened, like modular phones. It never got cheap enough, which is kind of sad. But maybe it can in the future. I still kind of doubt it, but it's the monopoly is still holding up a pretty high price on smartphones and gadgets, but eventually we're starting to see that it's starting to push through, and soon everyone can basically have these devices and mine value for themselves, and then eventually everyone's gonna be able to do HD videos daily. They're gonna have good access to tokens, to good internet connection, and then eventually you can create quite an epic ecosystem. So yeah, it's not fun to use an outdated device for around 8 to 9 months. It's not that bad. Like it's not like it was a Nokia 3310, but having a phone for 8 to 9 months with only around 2 to 3 hours of battery life per day, and charging it fully takes around 8 to 10 hours with a charger that barely works. You really feel like you barely can communicate with people. And it's funny how it's these little things. Yeah, I know that sounds super cheesy, like the little things, but yeah, it's gonna be the little things that it goes a little bit quicker on a new device to talk to other people. It takes a little bit faster to maybe render a video or something like that. Maybe you can do it on the device. It's these small things that's really going to compound, where they, for example, made these research tests with, for example, when people use the internet, if a website loads 1 second faster or something like that, it makes a massive difference. Like all these small little things compounds eventually, and then when the level of entry, when a lot of people can enter something, more people can experiment, more people can do their own research and development, and the tech is basically ready, and that's kind of cool. It's cool when devices start to be able to make value for themselves eventually, and make more with less. That's kind of cool, and try to make devices last longer. I really do hope devices in the future will last longer and that they will get a better battery life. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about. My experience using an outdated device for around 9 months. And it's going to be so nice to finally upgrade to a new phone instead of using an old phone from, I think it's from 2017. And I mean, for a power user, that is just, that's if you're using your device daily a lot, then yeah, that's a long time to basically use the device. And I know that there's always people that's gonna say, oh, I used my device for 4 or 5 years and it's still sort of working. But in many ways, I don't think they maybe are super maximizers of everything in their device. For example, I use the internet so much, I Google so much, I do all on the phone, and then they only do last around 2 years. But you're starting to get more value out of it because you can do stuff that, for example, if I make a video here, it can still pull in value 2025 if someone finds the video. So these devices can eventually produce long-term value, so you can win out in the long-term run. And eventually devices are going to be so good that you can do so much for so affordable price, and that is basically what we're waiting for. But yeah, it's not that fun to use or to feel, or to basically use an outdated device for 9 months. It really becomes hard to yeah, that's what I want to say. Have a great day, DTube and Steam blockchain. Bye bye.